on Hootie Hoop. Do. All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 134. Quick disclaimer. You're going to learn about some things you might not want to know about me. I guess this will have they all have an explicit little, what do you call it, a little explicit tab on it, but going to get a little dirty on this one. If you're my family and you don't want to know some things about me, well, you're going to have to know some things. It's not bad. It's just, personal stuff that, whatever. But for those that are struggling with, well, we'll get to the topic. But again, quick disclaimer. If hope you guys, I hope you liked the episode, but different topic. And I shared some things and I probably overshared, but so be it. All right, guys, we will get into the episode. All right, guys, back again. So we're going to kind of just get right into it. Our next guest, like I said, I tell people where I find everybody in pod matches. Such a great place. And we're going to delve into a topic that I have yet to cover or talk much about. And I try to get very personal with my life, but, there's certain avenues that just don't come up just because they're not relevant or haven't found a way to bring it up. But this is, obviously mental health is a underlying theme of the show, or every episode pretty much, whether it's about me or someone else. But this one is going to go to a different topic. So if anyone, I hate to give this disclaimer, but if everyone has sensitive ears, then I guess you should probably not listen to this one. But I'm going to be brutally honest myself because, like I said, I'm very interested in this topic. I don't think a lot of people talk about it enough because people write some of these things off just because it's a little taboo or whatever, but I think that's kind of horseshit. But yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, buddy, and tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Isaiah Cruz. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I've been working in addiction medicine for the last 6 years. I've been doing anything from opiate addiction, alcohol addiction, most recently pornography addiction. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about.
How old are you now?
I am 37.
Okay. So now what made you go to school for this? Or, I don't know how I'm sure you go to school for this. So, yeah, what made you actually want to take this up?
So I started in a family practice setting as a family practice nurse practitioner 6 years ago. Got into the schooling of family practice, realized, this really isn't for me. I need a subspecialty. At the time, I was working as an emergency room nurse. And we had a psych unit attached to the hospital. So we would get a lot of psychiatric emergencies and a lot of dual diagnosis, people wanting to withdraw from drugs, street drugs, and they would do that there as well. So I had experience with it, and a job opening came up locally, so I took it because I don't necessarily mind the addicted patient. I kind of fell into it, so to speak. Most people in the medicine world, it's a little bit, even in the medical field, it's addictions. It's still a little sensitive, even in regards to mental health. It's in a holding category. So.
No, what I mean, okay, so you obviously took it for school and everything, but was it something? What was it about it that you really wanted to get into this field? Was it you just really like to help people, or?
Yeah. So in 2016 is when I started. The opiate epidemic was really at its height. It kind of still is. Yeah. And I was applying for DEA license, prescribing that stuff. And I decided I don't want to prescribe opiates. I know some people need them, but I've had several, I guess not necessarily friends, acquaintances, people from high school I know who have overdosed on drugs. And I decided I wanted to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
Right. Where do you live?
Indiana.
Okay. Yeah, because I live in Pennsylvania, and we have Philadelphia is Philadelphia, but it is all over. And we have for a good while we had a huge problem with heroin and fentanyl, and but opioids it's always a recurring thing. We actually, the town I live in has a huge crisis center or a rehab center, and
Hmm.
they take people, and of course a lot of people down here didn't like it when they built it because there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily the best people to have around here, because a lot of them are criminals and they have past of drug abuse and so on, and some of them are trying to better themselves and some of them are taking advantage and whatever. But anyway, there's been that big fight around here for that stuff. But the opioid problem, it's you see how bad it gets, and it sucks because it's very easy to get hooked on it. And I've never done drugs in my life, but I mean,
Hmm.
it's prescribed for so many different type of pains, especially people who have chronic pain. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so frequent, and the sad part is it's actually easier to get on the street than it is from your doctor.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, as a person like, because he and I haven't got to know each other too much, so I'm legally blind from a very rare condition when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and so my eyes sometimes are very red, and it always looks like I'm stoned, and there's so many times people come up to me like, "Hey, what do you got? Can I get what you have?" Or, and sometimes I find it amusing, but sometimes it's really annoying. More
Yeah.
more so when I was living in Philly. I don't really get it much around here. But
Hmm.
there would be times people come up to me like, "Hey man, you want some Percocets, you want this, and you want volume, you want that." And I'm like, "Oh dude, I'm good. No thanks, I'm good." It's not even that
Yeah.
it's illegal. I'm just like I'm good. I don't need any of that stuff. I got enough
Right.
problems.
Yeah.
But that's how easy it was to get. I mean, it's just I'm just literally walking around my neighborhood and just some random guy I don't know has the whole stash of pills. So
Hmm.
I can imagine, you probably see a lot of characters, a lot of people that are just struggling with this problem that probably wasn't their problem until recently, or I mean, some people have it for long term, but I mean, like I said, sometimes it just comes out of nowhere with these addictions.
Yeah. That's a repeated story I get. Somebody injured, get a legit injury, sprained ankle, broken bone, even a toothache. Doctor gives them Percocets or Norcos, and they either like the feeling or they get sick when they stop or something like that. So it just continues from there. That's a pretty common scenario there.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so you started off by trying to help people with those type of problems with opioid issues. It evolved.
Correct. Yeah.
It evolved later on.
Yeah. So I did opiate addiction, some alcohol for last from 2016 to 2020. COVID hit and had to change jobs, and I went to strictly alcohol addiction, doing alcohol addiction online, which I like this as well. The thing with alcohol addiction, so opiate addiction, yeah, obviously you overdose and that's lethal. So alcohol addiction is less potential for lethality as far as overdosing, but withdrawing from alcohol can be lethal. People with opiates, you feel like you want to die. With alcohol, people have died from alcohol withdrawal.
Right.
So it's a little more medically sensitive as far as keeping the people out of seizures and things like that.
Yeah. What was it like to see like your first interaction with someone who's really in bad shape, maybe knocking on death's door, if you will? Like, is I mean, I'm sure now. I don't want to say you're desensitized, but it comes with a job where you have to kind of be used to these situations. But what was it like early on when you actually had to see somebody, really in having a real rough time?
Yeah. So um, I think I want to answer that in two parts here. I was an emergency room nurse, so I've seen a lot of overdoses and done chest compressions and pushed Narcan, which is the heroin reversal drug. And so I've seen it on that end. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were asking, but that's another critical piece because I saw it at that end. But sitting down in the office with a patient, I remember one of the guys. We grew up in the same similar area, not quite the same exact city, but very very close, and we had a lot in common. And I realized I'm just like three or four bad decisions away from being on the other side of this desk. There's like the stereotype for an opiate addict or heroin addict is homeless, the guy on the street, and society views it as lower than scum.
Yeah.
And then to have this guy come in about my age, from the same background, and it's like just had a car accident and was prescribed medication, and that kind of spiraled it down, and he's just using it was methadone at the time. He transitioned from methadone to Suboxone for pain control, and he couldn't stop because he'd go through withdrawals, and it was taking away his life, his money, his health, and it was kind of just a good eye opener for me to. I can always draw on that story if I find myself lacking empathy, because people in the medical field shy away from addictions for a reason. It's hard. It's hard, just like hospice. I did hospice as well, and that's emotionally hard as well. But it's emotionally hard, and you can kind of get a little numb to it. And when you find yourself doing that, you just have to take a step back and reset yourself. And I can always go back to that guy. Really kind of changed my career in that I can look back in that and have more empathy for each one of my patients.
Well, that's awesome, because not a lot of people can do that. It's very insightful and thoughtful, because it's hard for someone who, I don't want to say has it all, but in comparison to your patients and people you're dealing with, they're in such rough shape. And the fact that that, like you said, even with homeless, like we don't realize that we're probably too bad, non-payments or something, like we don't pay our bills or taxes or whatever. We're in really rough shape. Same thing, like I said, with me having a disability, like you're one bad car accident away from being disabled. Yeah. But a lot of people don't think that stuff because they feel like they're so far removed from that situation. But again, a lot of these people, I talked to my mom who is a registered nurse in the ER, and they talk about, because they have such strict rules on medication, and everything needs to be documented, and where this went, where that went, because a lot of nurses, not a lot, but I mean, there are nurses out there that end up succumbing to taking certain pills and stuff because they hurt their back lifting a patient or anything like that. And that's why it's like, there may be somebody on your table right now screaming and in pain or, whatever, and they just want some sort of pill to suppress that pain. But you can't look at them like, oh, that would never be me, because just pull your back out and let's see what happens. It doesn't mean you will, but you're really not that far from it, because when you're in agonizing pain, there are some stuff out there that will kind of numb it for a while. And unfortunately, those pills don't last forever, so then you got to take another one, and then you may be right where that patient is. So it's really cool that you actually were able to put yourself in their shoes, because I think that's something that's so missed, or it's really missing in the world in general, and why there's such a divide in every single area in life right now, because we don't know how to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And it's just a debate on what someone thinks about something, but they don't really know what the other side feels and how that would affect them. And so as a person who, like I said, you went to school, you were making money, and you have a good job, and, you have a home to come to, but you're looking at a person who is, not doing so well, and you can see yourself, that could be me in in a year or so, if I make the same decisions. So how did we, how long did you do as far as drug and alcohol for, as far as rehabbing and helping people?
Yeah, so I did it in face-to-face until the pandemic hit, and then I went virtually. I'm still working with alcohol addiction and pornography addiction. Not doing opiate addiction anymore. It's a little more difficult over telemedicine, because what you prescribe is controlled substances, and then it gets a little gray area with the DEA and everything. So a little harder to do when you work from home.
Now, how do you help people virtually? Like just typical situation. How do you do it?
So I work for a company that have a whole alcohol program, and so I do the medication part of it. We have therapists involved in everything. So I do a little bit of therapy here and there when time allows it, because I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner as well. I am allowed to do therapy, but I usually leave it up to the therapist who, one, are better at it than I am, and two, have more time in each visit to get into the therapy part of things. So I handle the medicine. There's about 5 different medications we use for alcohol addiction, and then we have a breathalyzer to keep accountability. And it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, it seemed like you had a real aptitude for this. Like this is something you were kind of meant to do. It, it's yeah, it's really good. Now, how did you get into like what made you want to help people with porn addiction?
Yeah, several things. So medically speaking, I kind of stumbled upon it. I was treating people for alcohol addiction and going in for refills. I had about 5 people in the course of about 3 months tell me, I don't take this for alcohol anymore. I take it for porn. It keeps me away from porn. And that really took me back because, one, porn addiction is pretty taboo, a lot of shame involved with it.
Sure.
And so I'm thinking, if these guys were able to tell me, that took a lot of guts. How many people are taking it for this and aren't telling me? So then I started researching. There's been several medical studies done on naltrexone for pornography use and antidepressants like a citalopram for internet sex addiction or compulsive sexual behavior. So
I was going to ask you because is there a difference between a porn addiction and a sex addiction? Is it just a part of a sex addiction?
Yeah.
Or can you have a sex addiction? Can you have a porn addiction without like constantly wanting sex from other people? You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah. And actually, that's kind of how most of it goes. Most people tend to choose porn over people because porn's easier. People, you have emotions and like if you're married or in a monogamous relationship, your partner's not gonna want to have sex every time you want to, but the computer will. It's always ready.
Well, because I asked you that just obviously because I like to know like to distinguish if there is a difference, but also like I remember when Tiger Woods was in the news for cheating on his wife and all, and it came out he was sleeping with all these women, and they're like, oh, he must have a sex addiction, and it's like. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a sex addiction. Porn addiction, I do agree with, but the sex addiction, I'm sure there's some really good examples of that. But a lot of times, especially when it comes to guys, a lot of times, especially when you're that famous and you can get laid by whoever you want, no matter what they look like. I don't know if it's. I mean, he was making some stupid decisions to getting laid,
right?
But I still don't think he had a sex addiction. I think he was just whatever. His wife was boring or bland or whatever it was. Because these guys just passed these women around, so she just after she left them, she moved and married another golfer. So these like women are in the same circles. So a lot of times they want to keep up an image too, like I'm married and we got this wholesome life, but in reality, deep down you're kind of a filthy person, and that's fine. But they want you to portray that they're great. So I always never understood. Like I don't know how to tiptoe around the sex addiction part because there's so much. People love to throw sex addiction to a lot of anytime a guy, especially a guy, does a lot of weird things for sex, even if it's like getting prostitutes or anything. It's like, I mean, maybe that's just what he's into. I don't know. But yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I kind of.
Right. Well, it goes back to how you define the word addiction.
Right.
So I define addiction doing something that's harmful to you, it's going to hurt you, not wanting to do it and continuing to do it.
Yeah.
So could he be sleeping around with people and not be a sex addict? Well, if he doesn't want to stop, then no. If it's not hurting him, then no. Or with sleeping around with multiple partners, you have an objective risk for infections.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be a risk. But so it depends on how the person's mentality is. You can. A good example is I treat people for porn. Some of the people, typically you hear of a porn addict, you think of somebody who's watching porn all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right. So I have people who watch porn once a month or twice a year, but they don't want to, and they find themselves doing it anyway, and it's harmful to them because their wives don't want them doing it, or their husbands, because females do it as well. Oftentimes, one particular example is a gentleman, a religious person, he volunteers in his church, and it just eats him up inside when he watches porn that 2-3 times a year that he slips up and watches porn, and he feels guilty, shameful, like a hypocrite, and swears he'll never do it again. 2 months later, he slips up again. Well, depending on how you define addiction, that still could fall under the definition of addiction, and not everybody's going to need medication for it, but this particular guy has been doing it for 10 years, off and on like that for 10 years. And just finally, he came for medication, and it helped him stay away from the porn.
Right. No, yeah, at the same token, I could easily see religion has always been a huge problem with that, where it doesn't allow you to experience what you want to experience, and you have to, again, it's an image thing. It's a whole thing you have to keep up, and if you, I mean, jerking off a few times a year to porn. I mean, there might just be some things he just wants to delve into, but he can't. It's a lot of these guys who get married to women, even though they're gay. It's just to keep up an image, but deep down, they really want to explore with men. And it's like, why? I mean, especially now in 2022. Again, I don't know. Yeah, but you're right. Like, I mean, it could definitely be perceived to be an addiction. I don't want to, like, put someone down, but I also, there's also another factor to it. And religion
Right. Oh
always kind of complicates things because because it's kind of like the teenage girl where if you tell her you can't do something, well, she's probably going to go do it. Sex or not, drugs, whatever. You say don't do it, and when her friends say it's cool, it's like, well, I'm going to go do it anyway.
yeah, yeah. There's always that element of it's
And
taboo,
and
so it's
you
extra
want to
fun.
try something, and so it's like for him, it's like he gets some sort of thrill, and there's a feeling he gets from jerking off to porn that he doesn't get in his regular life because it's all happy go lucky and we die for our, Jesus died for our sins and all these things. But there might be a part of him that you can believe in all that and love all that and still, like some filthy things. I mean,
Hmm.
so you can make the same argument to him like, hey, God invented that too. So, I mean, have fun.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, is there like a real definition to porn addiction? Because I ask, because there are guys who jerk, and again, I've been there. Sorry, mom and grandma, if you hear this, but oh well. You jerk off multiple times a day to porn, and I still don't. I mean, you could say whether it's healthy or unhealthy, but if you're not in a relationship,
Hmm.
like if you're just doing, some people do it for boredom, some whatever. But like in my case, like I just was like, okay, well, I'm turned on or I'm bored or whatever. But it's not
Hmm.
like, oh God, I need to watch another one. It's just,
Hmm.
it just, does what it takes care of my needs. So for you, like, is there like do you have a real definition? Because we know what drug and alcohol addiction is.
Yeah.
But porn is a really iffy one because not enough people talk about it.
Right. And non-substance use addictions are hard to define
Right.
because, like porn, like sex is a natural thing our bodies want. But if you take it to the extreme, just like there's food addiction, and so it kind of falls in that category. As
Sure.
far as in mental health, we use a thing called the ICD-10, which is like the dictionary for all mental health diagnoses. There is no pornography addiction in that diagnosis, so there's no actual diagnostic criteria for pornography addiction. It falls under either internet sex addiction or compulsive sexual behavior.
Okay.
So um, I had something when you were saying, I can't remember.
Well, while you're thinking about
Um,
it, like, can you like explain certain behaviors that
yeah,
a porn addict would go through?
yeah. So intrusive thoughts throughout your day about pornography. You close your eyes and see images, or it's 3 o'clock. You get off of work at 5 o'clock. Man, I can't wait to get home to be at home with my computer. Those are called intrusive thoughts. That's one sign. Social isolation, choosing not to go out with friends and choosing porn instead. That's another kind of a red flag. And then after chronic pornography use, just like with anything else, there's changes in your brain. Your brain physically changes. There's been several studies, brain imaging studies, that the changes in your brain to the prefrontal cortex to the nucleus accumbens that mimic a cocaine addiction. So that same reward pathways are being exploited and altered. Then there's a phenomenon called dopamine downregulation. So basically, what that means is you kind of build up a tolerance to dopamine. So your body's used to getting these high spikes of dopamine with pornography every day or twice a day or whatever it is, and then the amount of dopamine it takes for you to get excited is higher. So when you go to spend time with your loved ones or give your family a hug, the amount of dopamine released there is low, so low that your body doesn't respond as well to it. So you get less joy out of life because of the chronic pornography use.
Right. So what is the thrill for, on average or whatever, for a sex or a porn addict? Is it orgasming? Is it just constantly watching a porn, like opening their computer? Like what is the thrill? Like we know when someone snorts cocaine rocks up their nose, that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
when someone gets high or drunk, like that's the feeling. So what is, for the most part, what is the feeling for a porn act?
Well, it's going to differ from other people, but the basis behind it is the same as a cocaine addict. They want that dopamine release. So how they get there is different. So, and most porn people will tell you they didn't start out with the extreme stuff. They started out with softcore porn, and then before you know it, things that they used to find as disgusting, they need that in order to get that dopamine release because your brain likes novelty, and porn is novel. If you want a blonde today and a redhead tomorrow, you can have that, or do something that's more and more extreme in order for your brain to say, okay, this is new. I like this.
Yeah.
And that's they're chasing the same high as the drug addict.
Yeah, I know what you mean there, because we how old are you?
37.
Okay, I'm 33. So we grew up, roughly the same time, and when we were young, we were kind of the last generation, like right before the internet was a thing, and so we had, when you're a kid, when you're like young, when boys start kind of jerking off around somewhere between like 10 and above, somewhere in that age. I don't know when I started, but I would say somewhere 10, 11, 12, that area. And, you see softcore porn, you see like magazines, like if you had a kid who had a Playboy or something like that, you're like, oh, that kid's cool. And then we had these things, these little chip boxes where you can get pay-per-view and you can get like the Spice Channel. And, and it was like, oh my God, it was the greatest thing ever. And it showed up in the middle of the night. And I know I'm showing way too enthusiasm to explain this, but it for me, it showed, for most of the day, it showed horse racing, and then it was like 12:05. It was a random time, like 12:05 or something like that. It would just randomly cut into softcore porn. It would be on until like 6 a.m, and it was the greatest thing ever. And then at some point, Comcast and all them started to realize what channels you were paying for, so they would put a block on it. So then we went dry for no kind of porn for a long time, for a few years. And then, because if you wanted to pay for porn, you had to, or if you wanted porn, you had to actually pay for it, whether it was online or through Comcast or Verizon or any of them. And then this huge wave of free porn hit, and it destroyed a lot of men, a lot of people, but definitely men. And like what you were saying with the variety, if you are in the mood for a Chinese girl who's 5'8" and whatever, you could pick whatever you want, hair color, you could pick scenarios, you could pick whatever you want now. And back in the day, it was like, oh, you only had whatever was in front of you. You didn't have a choice. Right. So whatever was on TV or whatever was in that newspaper or magazine, that was what you had to get off to, and you were like, screw it. But now you actually have choices. And I'm sure some of that gets into the psychological like mind of, oh no, like, yeah, that girl may have been attracted to you 2 days ago, but right now it does nothing for me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's again, like I said, I have addictive. I have like addictive behaviors that I'm good at like keeping myself from stuff. That's why I never do drugs. I don't drink, but I've shown it in like video games and stuff. But when it comes to like porn, you can make a case, I guess, but in reality, it's still pretty healthy because I could go days without ever doing it. It's not a big deal to me. So it's just, but there's times where like I do kind of exude that kind of behavior, like, all right, black girl with red hair, cool, I'm good. Like but it's a thing because it really, you start to make decisions, and I'm sure you've had this where the guilt comes afterwards. Because sometimes you do it, and it's to something you would never even like ever be turned on by, but you're like, oh, and then you have to look at yourself afterwards. Because there's a lot of guilt that, especially when you're young, it's like, because I remember I had a kid in high school. He came up to me and was like, "If you jerk off to porn, this is his words, like, you're a faggot," which made no sense. In any way, even if you were jerking off to women, and again, like, it's just stupid kids saying dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And so then I had to think about that. So then I'm sitting there after I get off. It's like, and it wasn't even that I thought I was gay. It was just that I was like, I just felt like I was a loser. And I'm like, ugh. But now, like, the older you get, now you're more mature. And if you're making these certain decisions, it's like, oh, God, like, I'm still doing this at 33? What's wrong with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it keeps you from doing other stupid stuff, then, hey, whatever.
yeah, the lesser of the two evils, right?
Right. But go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you
So
gonna say?
you brought up two things: kids like being exposed to porn, and then like the ethics behind porn.
Uh-huh.
So back when we were kids, the worst thing you could get was a scrambled television show or a Playboy magazine
Right.
where you saw boobies. And now I was exposed to porn at 10, and I remember my buddy, my neighbor, had his uncle. We went to his uncle's to go swimming, and he had Playboys, and it was like the coolest thing in the world because I was 10 years old, and like that was the extent of it. And then I got exposed a little bit later. Same idea with pay per view. Recorded like I was 10, so we were into like WWF. So those were on pay per view back then. So whoever recorded it put it on a VHS tape and just left it recording all night.
Uh-huh.
Well, after the wrestling, the adult channels, and I kind of just stumbled upon it, and I thought it was cool.
Yep.
But that's nothing compared to what 10-year-olds can get now.
No, not
and
close.
Just the hardcoreness of it can destroy a person. But let's see, a couple of statistics. 94% of kids will be exposed to porn by age 14, which doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it every day, but that's still too high of a number. I think there needs to be some better controls on our internet. Like as a nurse, I'm allowed certain discounts. Like I think it's Under Armour will give me a nurse's like first responders discount. But in order to do that, I have to go to ID.me, put in my license number, and give them my nursing license number, and do all this stuff to get this code so I can get 5% off at Under Armour. Why don't they have that for adult websites? And so that to protect these kids from some of the outrageous stuff that's out there.
Yeah, 94%. I mean, you might as well make it 100 at this point. Yeah, I mean, I know for a second though, I actually was like, maybe that's too low, because I can't imagine
Right.
I can't imagine someone up till 14 still hasn't seen porn. It's like,
Right.
Like I've met girls who are virgins in their 20s or guys who are virgins in their 30s or whatever, but I've never met anyone who's actually waited till they were 21 to drink. But I've never met anyone who's never seen some sort of sexual content before like 12. And,
Right.
I mean, how it comes up, it just comes up, whatever. But, I mean, again, we had to actually try to find stuff. Now,
Right.
like you Google anything, you can Google Donald Trump and somehow some random thing will come up about Ivanka's feet or some random shit. And you're like, how did I get here? Like, this is not, I swear I'm behaving myself. I'm not trying to look up anything sexual. And, or even if you like with the feet thing, you Google search any woman, like the sixth most popular search of that person is something ass or feet or tits or something. And you're like, Jesus, like we are in a world of that we're fucked. But it's because that's, I mean, like I said, I'm not a very deviant person. I'm into what I'm into, but I'm also just, I'm very tame in comparison to these people because I see what people are buying. Like people are buying used underwear and socks. I'm like, if I ever do that, I'm killing myself. Like if anyone ever caught me doing that, I'm killing myself because I'm like, that's an all-time low. I saw these people gambling at a laundromat, and I'm like, wow, that's an all-time low. Like I can't. I'm not judging them, but I'm like, I have to try to find ways to feel better about myself. And I'm like, my God, like if I ever thought I had a real porn addiction or anything or sex addiction, I'm like, I am not buying used socks. So that does nothing for me. Sorry, so I'm jumping off. So is there more statistics you had?
I do, but I do just want to. That's the shame behind a pornography addiction or sex addiction. Because I mean, I do just want to say that there's no reason for. I know you're just using "kill yourself" as an expression, but there might be some people who do buy underwear who are listening to this.
Sure.
So
I'm not.
Don't kill yourself.
Yeah, don't kill yourself. I'm just saying me personally because I'm like that. For me, like that would be my bottom. And I've talked about it on here. I've hit bottom mentally. I try to kill myself. So this isn't. I am not judging anyone. Like I said, the reason we're even talking about this is because I'm not judging. And I don't know what it's like to really like. I have sexual urges, and sure, and when you hit dry spells and you don't have a physical being to sleep with, Yeah, you get frustrated and you start making stupid decisions online, like texting exes or whatever, to try to get that feel, that dopamine of like, oh man, I just want to get horny and just have that. There's a certain feeling. It's one thing to be turned on, but it's another feeling where it's just like it's uncontrollable. And that feeling feels so good for a little while, but you do stupid shit for it. And you do that more. I think most people do that, especially when they're young, because you don't know how to control that part of you. But the older you get, you're still doing it. I think that's where it really becomes an addiction. So, but I don't want anyone to kill themselves. It's just, for me, that would be my all-time low, because it's like I use clothing on anybody. I don't care how attractive the girl is. I don't want your clothing. I really don't. I have enough clothes myself, and I don't need clothes around here I can smell. I just don't.
Two things about that. I saw a video. This guy was selling girls' underwear. He'd wear them around all day, work out in them, and then sell them and pretend to be a girl. So people were thinking they're buying a sexy girl's underwear, and it's really a dude.
Oh God! I mean, look, for the people who are selling them, good for them, because they're making some of these girls are making thousands of dollars, and they're just going to Walmart buying socks and underwear. It's like, good for you. Shit.
Yeah. And then the second, you mentioned the ethics behind porn. I was on a podcast, I think, last week, and the guy was pretty open about his porn. He's like, I watch porn. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm like, I'm not judging you. I'm not here to tell you that porn is wrong or porn is okay. You have to make that determination for yourself.
Sure.
But a person should make an educated decision about it. So porn is the third most common type of sex trafficking is in the pornography industry. That's reported by the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Okay. The lines of consent is kind of blurred with pornography. So if you've watched a decent amount of pornography, there's a chance you've watched porn where that person did not give consent to have sex or consent for that video to be released. So then think about the ethics behind that.
Now, are we talking now? Is this worldwide, or is this America? Because there is a lot of these casting couches, these weird things where they hide cameras and stuff like that. But like, if you're talking about like the mainstream, again, I shouldn't even know all this. My family's gonna hate me. But like Bang Bus and all these different things, these Bang Bros and Brazzers and all these like high end companies, they're the ones that really test for STDs and. So are we talking mainstream, or are we talking about just as a whole? And we're talking about worldwide, or just United States?
So the first one, the sex trafficking, that was from the National Human Trafficking Hotline, USA. Okay. So that's just the national one.
Fair enough.
Then we have to think about consent, as far as, is this person under the influence when they gave consent? Okay. Was this person coerced into giving consent? And then the ethics behind, this is their job. Yeah, but if they don't do this film, are they going to have money to eat or money to get a hotel for the night? Or they might be homeless without it. Sure. Like, then that's not much better than prostitution at that point. And then, sure, there's some porn stars who are making crazy amounts of money, but there's a lot who are doing this out of desperation. Yeah. And then just to think about the ethics behind that, it doesn't sit well with me. And
but I mean, as far as the human trafficking, is that a lot of that still coming from? I mean, you would know. I have no idea. I'm just asking. But as far as like the mainstream, like, are a lot of these, are some of these girls, like, like one of the big things people are talking about nowadays is like the R. Kelly thing. Like, he had this whole horde of this cult of women that he kept in rooms and made them piss and shit in buckets, and they had to, when he wanted sex and whatever he wanted, he has to tell them when he wants it, and if they want to eat, they want something, they have to come to him. And again, a lot of these girls, because they turn out so many different young girls, you see a new girl coming out every time in porn. Like, are we talking about, like I said, because there's a difference between this mainstream porn and then there's the Japanese and German porn where they're doing all kind of disgusting things.
Well, yeah, anybody with a smartphone can make a porn, and Pornhub will let you upload stuff, so anybody's a porn star now.
But I mean like the major companies, like the ones that, like the people we know by name, the stars, we know them by their body shape. They're the one making toys and molds of themselves and all. Like the people that have names, like, are these companies that these actresses or whatever you want to call them, are we talking about mainstream porn? Because when you start talking about child trafficking, obviously it gets really serious, and you can definitely
Right.
see it in the really grungy, like I said, casting couch type stuff. But are we talking about mainstream as well? Because if I mean, that's a huge problem if it is.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that,
Fair enough.
but it goes to the back to the definition, how you define sex trafficking, because oftentimes it's coercion and or dependence. If they make this person dependent on them for their money, or the producer will say, "Hey, stay with me while you get your first paycheck," and then before you know it, he or she is the one holding the money. Then they're dependent on that person for their livelihood. Well, that might fall under sex trafficking, and or coercion. Because if you get some real famous big directors and producers, just like coaches and their student athletes, the coach has a lot of sway emotionally over them. And that person who's famous and the person looks up to them, they have a lot of sway. And are they using it appropriately or misusing their relationship with them?
Yeah, just
Kind of depends on how you define that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, because I'm sure a lot of these girls, they watch this stuff and they see somebody and like, oh, she's gorgeous and look how awesome she is, but they don't really know what she had to go through, because it was known that there's a lot of guys had to sleep with other guys just to get in the industry. And that wasn't even what they were into, but it was something that's like, well, if you want to make money in this industry, like there's certain stuff in porn that you have, like you may not want to be with black guys, but you have to sleep with black guys because it makes the most money. Or, because maybe you're more into women, but women doesn't sell like anal or some other category. And there's a lot of things these girls have to do to just make the money they want to make. Even if they've been in the business for a good while, they have to make certain decisions. Unless, now I know OnlyFans and a lot of that stuff has come out that is making making it better for them, maybe more fruitful for their financial ventures. But when it comes to just like the mainstream porn, like there was that one guy, I forget his name, but he went to jail for a good while for just doing horrible things, just beating women and whatever. I guess he was paying them all right, but he was doing so many horrible things and just hurting them. Like it wasn't even that he was doing disgusting things; he was also hurting the women.
Right.
And that was what he went to jail for.
Yeah. That brings me to my next statistic. 9 out of 10 porn videos have violence or aggression towards women. And of those 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 of those have positive or neutral reactions by the women. So that's training all these young teenagers who are watching porn. That's training them that women like to be abused or violence or aggression towards them, because the porn stars will react in a positive light to that. And I'm not knocking you if you're into that, but we kind of have to agree that that's not normal. That's not the norm. Most people aren't into violence in regards to sex.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of interviews and stuff just with actresses, like porn actresses, just talking about like their time in the adult industry, and a lot of them will say like we pray for when, like we're so happy when we actually get to sleep around on a bed, because we have to do all these weird positions and we get to fuck on a rock quarry or some random place, and it's like it's not that fun. Like there's a lot of this stuff that just isn't that fun, but we edit it to makes it look so good. And I do think they have come out with certain companies that have been more positive towards women, more sexual and romance, and there's a couple companies out that I've seen that are more towards women and what they like. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of it is very degrading towards women. You're like, well, they're fucking on camera, but it's like, no, there's a difference. There's a lot of it where it's just, where the guy's sleeping with a girl and he's just putting his foot on her head and, slapping her around, all that. And the girl has to say she's into it. And it's some of it is like, like I said, I'm glad I have a heart, and I'm glad I can watch that stuff and then go, okay, I'm out, because this is like not fun. Like it's one thing when a girl's really into it and it's a consensual thing, but this is also a problem. And I'm sure, it's part of your statistics is that a lot of, especially these young guys, they get with these young girls and they expect them to do what they see on the screen. And that is not, regardless if they're a virgin or not, you can't take from one relationship to the next anyway. You can't just say one girl's into what the last girl's into anyway. But when you take what was on the screen in porn, and you just imagine, oh, I'm gonna do all these things, and she's gonna be into all that. I'm gonna spit on her. I'm gonna do, and like, no, that's not like normal. People aren't into that shit for the most part, and
Right.
it really, and that's, I mean, that's, I'm sure that's how some certain rapes happen, because guys don't get what they want, and also just girls get physically hurt because the guy is trying things that she would never ever try. It's just he saw it and he wanted to mimic it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings sexual expectations. A lot of teenagers are getting their sex education from porn.
Yeah.
So that one, it's going to lower your expectation. You're not going to go to have sex and the girl's going to have an orgasm once every minute. Like that's not real life. The average woman takes about 15 to 30 minutes to have an orgasm. And that's not what's on porn. So your expectations going in is going to be like, okay, this isn't real life. And as adults, you and I know that it's not real. But a lot of the teenagers, they don't. They think this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've been with girls who can orgasm pretty frequently, pretty easily if she's into you. But then I've been with girls that took forever. That's the stuff. And again, and another thing that a misconception with porn is not every girl gets off in porn. Like there's girls that just don't get off because because all those angles they have to do, and it's just they're kind of uncomfortable with the camera. But again, it makes them money. It's their job, so they're performing. They really are actresses. I mean, they like to be called that. I know they don't really like the term porn star. Some of them don't anyway. Regardless of whatever you want to call them, but they really are acting in a lot of ways. Yes, they may be really doing. I mean, they're really indulging in the sex, but some of it isn't as pleasurable as they're making it seem, just because, like I said, there's so much to it that you don't, if you pulled you turned around the fourth wall, there's like 6 people there with cameras. It's not just them in a bed. You know, that's not how it goes. And so a lot of these girls, and then a lot of times these girls they get close enough to orgasm, and then they have to shoot around another scene, or they got to move because they didn't get in focus, and they ruin the moment. So there's a lot of it that people don't see. They just see what they want to see, and what the camera is showing you. And so it really does. I've done enough research on it just because I just looked it up, and sometimes I'm just bored, and there's times I've watched silly porn just not for pleasure, just for silliness, because there's so much silly crap out there. But there's a lot of times I like to see where these people come from. And yes, there's the typical, oh, my dad wasn't there, and whatever, I fell into porn and I had a rough life and all. But there's girls just like, look, I like sex and this is what I do. But I'm curious about, because they're written off people, like, oh, they're all dumb bimbos who just are whores, and it's like, it's not always the case. But there are definitely a lot of lost women in porn for sure. And it doesn't look well for women, but again, every person has a right to do what they want with their body. And I'm not going to sit here and begrudge porn, because I do enjoy it to some degree, but I'm also single. So.
Right. Yeah. So if, so the company I started, no-x.net, we treat pornography addiction with medication. The first medication, naltrexone, how it works is it, 1, makes a person less impulsive overall. 2, it helps to reduce intrusive thoughts about pornography. And then 3, the biggest one, is it limits the endorphin release from external stimuli. Okay. And the next question I usually get is, well, is it going to limit the endorphin release from things I enjoy, like sex with my spouse, or running, or exercising, or hugging my kids? Well, short answer is no. Because it does it on the receptors in the brain from external stimuli. So it's most helpful for people who, kind of like Pavlov's law. When you open your computer, somebody who's chronically used porn, they open their computer, their brain is already releasing dopamine because they know what's coming, and that starts the snowball. So a person could just have to open their computer for work, and then all of a sudden they're on a site that they shouldn't be, and they don't know how they got there. Like, one thing led to another, one thought led to another. So this medication will help to stop that. And I always say medication is a tool. You still have to do all the hard work, but it happens that jobs are easier when you have the right tools for the right job. So I always recommend therapy as well. So therapy is really the gold standard. Cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing are really the 2 gold standards for addiction.
So it doesn't stop you from having erection. It just stops you from having that
Right.
curiosity of you, that search for that random
Yeah, that
video that you'll never find.
snowball yeah, the snowball of dopamine kind of shuts that down. And it may not take it all away. Like the person still has to do all the hard work.
Right.
And well, I told somebody what I do, and they thought I did chemical castration. And I'm like, no,
Oh
this
boy.
is not at all what that is. So that was naltrexone. The next medication we use is citalopram. You can be on one or the other or both. Um, Citalopram is a very common antidepressant. It helps with porn addiction by decreasing the anxiety related to porn or stopping porn. And then it does cause sexual dysfunction, decreases a person's libido. And that's the side effect from the antidepressant, but we're actually using it for that effect.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's singles who like that medication. People who aren't in a relationship and don't necessarily need a high libido and they don't mind a decrease in libido, that would be an option for them.
Yeah. Well, I'd be amiss if I didn't ask this. Like, where does the child porn addiction come in? Because I know that's a big thing, and obviously it's gross, but I mean, I'm sure that probably gets lumped in there somehow.
Yeah, well, you have your porn addiction and then you have your illegal stuff.
Right.
And that's kind of crossing the line of like being, you have your mild porn users, average porn users, extreme users, and then illegal users.
Right.
And
But I mean,
that becomes,
like,
let's go ahead.
no, because again, there people are gonna write people off for anything, and I'm not condoning masturbating to child porn, but addiction is an addiction, and it's a very similar one because it's just something they found something. Their dopamine is coming from something that's awful. But also,
Mm-hmm.
if they were a person who was molested and horrible things happened to them, to some degree, it isn't their fault. And how can't we try to rehabilitate them just like you would rehabilitate a person with a porn addiction? It's
Yeah.
very similar. It's just we find that one more grotesque than the other. But there are people, again, there are people that are struggling, and again, there are people dealing with the obvious opioids, cocaine, and whatever. And then there are people that are sniffing that spray that they spray on their computers and their printers and whatever that shit is, that air stuff. Like, there's stuff that's very unusual, and we can't really understand it because we don't know anyone with that experience. I don't know anyone who's jerked off to children, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been in some really dark places mentally of just wanting to kill myself, wanting to hurt other people. And I can't judge anyone who is into that. So, I mean, have you ever tried to, have you ever, been brought upon trying to help someone with that kind of problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oftentimes, you're right. There is some type of trauma
Yeah.
there that, with most addictions, that's how it starts, is a trauma. I talked to one therapist, and they 9 out of 10. Well, this is a statistic that is not a real one. That this is just me talking with a therapist.
Yeah.
That like 9 out of 10 of the addicts had some type of sexual abuse done to them, and this was when I was working in opiate addiction. There's you're just compensating for that, looking to fill a gap in there. But oftentimes people don't start with child porn. They'll start with porn and then search the 18-year-olds, and then the 18-year-olds looking younger and younger and younger.
Yeah.
Before you know it, they're doing preteens and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it goes back to the escalating, building a tolerance to the porn, to the dopamine downregulation, and wanting something more novel, more extreme. And like you said, you tell me I can't do it, it's even more fun when I do it. And
Yeah.
that's where the illegal stuff comes in. And because it is illegal, now you're getting away with something. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in the brain at that point, and definitely try to rehabilitate, for sure. But at some point, I was talking to somebody just yesterday on a podcast. A pastor, religious figure, ended up doing a lot of horrible things to kids. He's in jail now. He doesn't regret it. He'd do it again if he got out. Of course, this person's in jail for the rest of his life. But I mean, at some point, like, this person isn't even open to rehabilitation himself, let alone us giving him the chance.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure we talked about it because I know, it's obviously very similar, but it's something it plagues a lot of people. There are people that are not happy with it, and I like that you said that. It's almost like they're kind of leveling down or leveling up in a way where it's like, I'm going to tempt myself. Okay, 18. Okay, so this girl looks like she's 14, but she's really 18, but she's playing really young. And then it's like, okay, but how can I go? Let me try a little younger. And you start to tempt yourself, and for the rest of us, the regular people, or how we're supposed to feel, we're supposed to just go, okay, that's gross. There's nothing about that's attractive. But there are people that find that, just like there are people that watch porn and just regular people screwing, and it's like, well, oral sex and interracial and all none of that stuff does anything for me. I need someone pissing on somebody. It's you go to a point where it's just and I don't know, we haven't talked about it, but that's been one of the things people have talked about with serial killers. A lot of like the major serial killers, one of their biggest issues is they were addicted to porn, and they were introduced to porn really young, and it was something that triggered them. However true it is or not, that is a real theme in a lot of their backstories.
Oh yeah, and that is there's a lot of research studies done on it. And we don't know if it's a causative factor or just like an incidental finding.
Right. Yeah, and then you also don't ever know if some of these people are trying to make them crazy or like make their lore. Because you always say, it's like, well, they say Jeffrey Dahmer killed like 8 people. You always hear somebody say, yeah, but he might have killed 60. And like they add to the lore of his craziness. And sometimes these people, they are crazy, but they're also brilliant, a lot of them. But sometimes they add certain things to spice it up, like what Hollywood would do with a story. It's like, oh, and again, I'm not saying that they didn't jerk off to porn, but sometimes they throw stuff in there to make them worse. It's like, yeah, but he also ate, bats. It's like, did he though? Maybe he tried one. I don't know, but he cooked one day, but he didn't eat a whole bat. It's just sometimes they add to stories just to spice it up for whatever.
Yeah.
But that is a real theme though with serial killers that porn is been a problem, and then they say there's certain porn can definitely trigger some things. But again, like most of us, we could watch it and it's just like, okay, it's just for pleasure, and that's it. And yeah, sure, you may go a little extra and try to push the boundaries of, maybe you've been on this site too long and you're trying to find this unicorn video that's in your head that you've fantasized forever and you can't find it. So eventually you just, get off to some random video that probably wasn't even what you wanted. But it's like, it is what it is. But there's a certain point where you're just, it's so extreme and you have to have this feeling. And if you don't get it, it's going to ruin you. I know, Bullet. Sorry, my cat's meowing. Yeah. Now, we haven't really talked about what because I don't have any example of someone who was addicted to porn, but you yourself was addicted to porn, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I was exposed to it at 10. I thought it was cool, and then intermittently throughout my teen years, and then it kind of hit a wall in my early 20s. I one day looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? I think I watched porn every day this month. I was like, I don't want to be that person. And so I kind of took a break and stopped. And then getting married, I was like, oh, that's going to solve that problem, right?
Huh.
So that's kind of the ongoing joke. Anybody who's married knows that that's
right.
Most opposites is true. It's
right.
going to be sometimes more frustrating sexually than if you were single. So, and then it was kind of like what the example I gave, watch a binge on porn for a week and then a month off.
What was your bottom? Like where you knew this is like really bad?
Well, the one time I looked at myself in the mirror in my early 20s, but I couldn't stop. And then it was this one phrase when I think I was turning 30. You have to be the man you want your daughters to marry. And that phrase stuck with me. It stuck with me. Huh. And knowing what I know about mental health, I know that porn, no matter if nobody ever catches me watching porn, it changes me. It's going to change me. And I don't want my daughter marrying somebody who's addicted to porn. And I know if I'm going to have to stop. And then I have to be that man because she's going to be attracted to somebody who's like me, and she may never even know. And hopefully she'll never know. Although me starting this company, I'm pretty open about porn with my kids and how they should stay away from it and everything. But I know that, and that was kind of my turning point there.
Okay. Now, are you like just super anti-porn? Like you just hate it and you want nothing to do with it?
That's a good question.
Because I mean,
you mean like personally or professionally?
Well, both. Because I mean, look, porn does help people. There's a lot of guys that make really bad decisions. I say guys mainly because guys have a harder time controlling their sexual urges than women do. Because there's a certain point where you get a hard on, and even if a girl bumps it or whatever, you get to a point where you're like, I gotta get off. Like, especially when you're really young and you're just fertile and you just have to get off.
Right.
And there's a certain point where you have to get off, and sometimes guys will make kids and whatever teenager will make really bad decisions. But if they would have just went home and watched a little porn and jerked off, they wouldn't have done the things that they did. And I'm not even just talking about rape or anything like really heinous, but just stupid stuff like just, sleep with a girl that they didn't need to. Maybe they got an STD or something, or they just got a girl pregnant when it's just like, because that thrill of, oh God, I just wanted to come. And so, yeah, for you, like, because I know you had a bad history with it, but I mean, are you so anti-porn because you hate it because it was, a bane of your existence, you hated it so much, or is it just, it's not for you?
Personally, I'm 100% against it. Okay. And professionally, I realize that, one, there's no way for us to completely get rid of porn. And I know that there are people who are I respect that. If you're going to do that, that's fine. But like I said earlier, there are some objectively bad things about porn that before you consume porn, you should at least know that, yes, you are contributing to the sex trade. And yes, some of the videos you watch, the consent may be blurred or a little gray. Yeah. Are you okay with that ethically? And
let me play devil's advocate. So, because, and I always call them landmines, because it doesn't, no matter what you buy or do in life, you're going to do something that's against your morals. Let's say I buy iPhones. Well, they basically enslave Chinese children to make their phones. I don't agree with that. I hate that shit. But if I buy Samsung, what do they do? So yes, you're right. Like there's a lot of bad that goes in porn, but people don't watch porn because they grab children and they enslave them and they do whatever it is they do. But it's like, I'm not saying porn has a lot of great things about it, but it's a distraction. And in the world we live in, distractions are needed because there's so much bad shit out in the world, and porn is not on the top 20 of what's going on. And I'm not saying it because I like it. I don't need porn in my life. It's if I'm with somebody who we have good sex, then sure, I'm unless she's not around and whatever. But I don't need it. But it serves a purpose for when I need it. Now again, I don't have an addiction to it. But like heroin, let's say, like, when you put it on the level of, like, let's say something so bad like heroin, there's nothing good about heroin. There's just nothing. Heroin doesn't have any good results whatsoever. Yes, people do it. There are people that function well on it. There's people that live a long time doing it. But heroin is not good. It's not like cigarettes.
Heroin.
Go ahead.
Heroin is a great pain medication. It's about 8 times. It's almost 100 times stronger than morphine. And a lot of my patients, they are chronic pain patients, and heroin will take away your pain. It just comes with a whole lot of side effects.
No, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just
but yeah, go ahead.
I'm just comparison as far as like the porn thing. Like, I get why you don't like it, but also, like I said, there's people that just it's just their thing. It helps them, it distracts them. I mean, it does help with anxiety. As a person who has anxiety, I don't use it for that, but it has helped. Again, like I said, I understand why you wouldn't like it, but I don't know. It's for me, like it's something I don't think I would be against it, just because it's like, it is what it is. Again, like I understand the sex trafficking and all that, but you can't really escape that with anything. You can not watch porn and survive, sure. But again, try not to buy any products. Don't buy from Amazon ever. Don't support any of these companies, and you're going to be living out in the woods because because if you purchase anything and any of these major companies, you're going to deal with somebody who's doing something bad to someone else, and porn isn't excluded from it.
Right. No, I agree. I know there's no way for us. I'm not trying to take down the porn industry or anything.
I know.
I
just want to make it clear, because,
Yeah. But imagine if even 10% of the people watching porn decided, who are just mild porn users like yourself, decided not to. I'm just, instead of watching porn, I'm going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And that's going to take away the demand for porn by 10%. So that's going to take away the supply of porn. And then there's going to be less people trafficked. And it goes back to, our t-shirts are made by people with unethical working situations. So I get it. And it is a hard question. There's really no good answer.
Yeah. What doesn't make anything better is, porn isn't like the mainstream porn isn't like the money isn't what it used to be because everything's free now. And that's why OnlyFans and a lot of these special, like the top-notch stars will have their own sites that are dedicated to them so that people will buy their stuff. But a lot of the middle tier and the newcomers, they ain't going to make the money unless they have a specific look or something about them that draws attention. But overall, the money isn't in the porn industry anymore because of, Pornhub and all these free sites.
It is. Porn isn't the money isn't with the porn actors and actresses.
No.
Much like Google is free but makes billions.
Yeah.
Pornhub's free, but they make billions too.
Yeah. I know OnlyFans and stuff like that is hurting them, but it's just one thing. But you look, as an example, look at what happened with OnlyFans recently. They said they were going to get rid of all of their explicit content. And as soon as they did that, they lost a shitload of members, and every porn star, every person was like, "We're done. We don't need you. We'll just make our own content." And they immediately jumped back and said, "No, never mind. We're not doing that," because they knew their whole company would crash. Their company would be done because that's why people go. And OnlyFans is a really good example of how I think porn addiction, because it's kind of like a video game where, video games were always free. And then there's this online downloadable content, and you're like, okay, I'll pay $10 for some new levels or whatever. And then all these like apps came out, these games like Angry Birds and all that. And it's like, well, now I need a new, what's the big shooting game all the dumb kids play? Fortnite. And it's all those V-Bucks, and you buy outfits and you do all this horse shit. And you're like, oh my God, like you just spent $50 on a pair of jeans for this guy. And it's like, so when I make the example is that, or the analogy is because when you go to OnlyFans, for people who haven't been on this site, you go on there and you pay a subscription to be on just one person, not the entire, it's not like Netflix where you pay $15 and you get to watch everything on it. You pay $20, $15, $10, whatever is for a specific person. And then they have other content that's like even more explicit, so you could pay per video and all that. And I only tried OnlyFans one time. It's horseshit. It's pointless. But I see how these people make so much money off of it. It's a complete ripoff for the consumer. But when you go to buy, so if you're like, oh, but now I want to go to the next, I want to find someone else on here, someone else I like.
Right.
Well, now you have to pay more for them. And then you could pay specific for private videos directed to you, dedicated to you, and there's so much to it. But you're just constantly throwing out money, and so I'm imagine if someone has a porn addiction, they're broke, and you have to have some when you're using these kind of platforms or you have to have a lot of money because your income has got to be just going to this because it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much you get into that kind of stuff, but I mean, the financial realm of that, there's a lot of people that don't have the kind of money to throw out. I mean, the porn is like what we talked about. A lot of it is free, but there's that dopamine of, but there's stuff I can't see. Oh, I need to pay for this, and then you're like, okay, well, that's cool, but for another $10, I can get a personal video with my name in it, and it gets to a point where I can see how this has got to be really bad for those who are suffering from addiction. Because now it's a financial problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it. You know, I mean, I've never had to break it down, even really put it in my head, but it's amazing. I mean, it's good to be honest about this because I mean, I love that you're being so honest about it and that you even are open to even talking about. I had one myself because a lot of people were very shameful because porn. When you even hear porn, we try to act like the world we live in isn't this sexualized world. We try to make it like it's taboo, but it's not. It's it's so silly because the end of the day, if because I one of the big things that people do in porn, one of the categories is like stepbrother stepsister thing, right? But like at the end of the day, they're not really related. But for some reason, they have a line where it's like, well, we're not going to be brother and sister. But it's like,
Hmm.
what's the point? I don't even know why you're even like. People will jerk off to it or play with themselves to it no matter what. It's like don't act like you have a line now because it's so out there and they're just but again, like I said, porn is so. But then when we get to like regular basic television, we have to show shadows or we have to cut to commercial when the two are about to kiss. When if you go to HBO, you're seeing titties and ass everywhere. So it's like it's
Yeah.
this weird mix where it's like, the biggest song in the world a couple like 2 years ago was a song called "Wet Ass Pussy," and it was all over the radio. They just changed the word pussy. I forget what they changed it to, but it's a very sexualized song that sets women back God knows how many years. And there's nothing wrong with women being sexualized, but it's just girls yelling about their vaginas, and it's like holy shit. So like we try to pretend like this world isn't a sexualized world. We go everything's taboo. We can't. I mean, especially we're in cancel culture, so we can't say all the no words. We have to say the letter words now. So
Hmm.
it's so ridiculous when the reality is everyone's having sex. Porn is everywhere, and
Hmm.
every movie or show has something where somebody's hooking up. It's just whether how far they go with the visualization of it. But
Hmm.
again, like I said, I'd love that we can talk about this because, like I said, when you even hear porn, it's like, oh, that's hee hee porn, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a problem for people, and it's something that helps people. So I don't like, why
Right.
are we acting like it does, like it's this thing in the shadows?
Yeah.
Because
It's
honestly,
real taboo in our culture for sure.
to be honest, there's some of those porn actresses can act better than some of the real actors in real life. That's the sad part. But that's another story. But I mean, not most of them. But I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's we act like this is like something that's so taboo, and it's really not because it's on it's 2 clicks away on everybody's screen,
Right.
and it's
For sure.
yeah. And so I guess it's good that you're doing what you're doing because you're taking the angle of helping people, and there are people that need it. And if everyone pretends like this thing doesn't exist, well, then there's a lot of porn addicts out there that are never going to get the help that you're providing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, do you have any like you have a website or anything?
Yeah. Nox.net. No, the letter, word no, no-x.net.
Okay.
And that we do telemedicine in all 50 states in Washington, D.C. And you can go in there and look at all the content, and we have some resources. If you still have questions, go to the About Me section. You can actually set up a quick Zoom meeting with myself, the founder, and we spend 10 minutes answering some of your questions about medication assisted treatment.
That's cool. Did we cover everything? Because like I said, I don't know much about porn addiction other than the basics, so
Yeah,
I want to make sure
yeah.
we covered
Uh,
everything.
yeah, one thing I do want to put out there for parents, we did talk about average age of exposure is 11, and the content is different than when we were growing up. It's not just a Playboy and a still image of movies. It's some hardcore stuff. So to protect your kids, I typically will recommend an internet blocker while they're younger, and as they get older, I recommend transitioning to a accountability software. So not necessarily shielding them, giving them a little bit of slack to mess up while you still have some sway over them. But for the younger kids, giving them the words, the vocabulary to let them know what they're seeing. Because if the parents can't say penis and vagina without giggling, or it's taboo in the house, then the kids are they don't have a chance to have a sex education. So give your kids a sex education and tell them what porn is. Like this is pornography, and And if you don't want your kids, well, watching porn, obviously, because I believe it's, I don't know the laws on children watching porn, but it can be considered child abuse. But tell your kids, like, this is what you do. This is porn. And when you see it, this is what I want you to do. And then come home and tell me. And then as a parent, your job is not to freak out and not to call, Susie Joe's dad or mom and yell at them for like exposing their kid to porn. But have an action plan, because we know it's going to happen. And let's come up with a good plan for when it does happen. We can respond well to it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I'm always big on, kind of putting the light on subject matter that just doesn't get talked about enough. It's a long time coming. There's too much of this stuff that we can't pretend like it doesn't exist. No matter how uncomfortable it makes us feel, how angry, how sad, whatever emotion. At least you get an emotion from it, like something. Yeah. It jolts conversation. Let's just talk, and let's just see perspective. And again, there's people that are suffering, and you gotta help them, regardless of how crazy it may seem and odd or whatever. Just understand that somebody's struggling from it, and just be grateful that it's not you. Because I'm glad I don't have a drug problem. I'm glad I don't have a porn or alcohol problem. I'm glad I don't have sex addiction. But I realize that it's I'm grateful for it. But I also know, like you said, when you were in the hospital there watching some of your patients, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this could be me. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, I know I could be one of these people in some way, shape, or form. So I'm glad what you're doing. You're doing a lot of good work, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, buddy. Like I said, keep in touch, and I'll let you know when it comes out.
All right, thanks.
All right, brother. Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So before we get out of here, I should probably apologize to my family. Sorry, family. And everyone who knows. Well, no, there's certain people that know me that just know, like, okay, this is clearly, like, of course he knows a lot about porn. Why wouldn't he? Because it's how he talks. But yeah, I didn't even go as deep as I could have. There was that one episode we talked a lot about wrestling. You could tell I knew too much about wrestling. Well, I think most people that love me would prefer me to talk about wrestling. But it's okay. It is what it is. Like I said, I like to just be honest, man. I don't know. If it makes me weird that I know so many porn actresses and whatever. Like, it is what it is. I've been masturbating for, oh boy, this just sounds like I'm like really like putting myself out there as an addict. But I've been masturbating since I was like 10. Whatever, man. I ain't doing no harm. But I really enjoy, on an all serious level, on a serious note, I really like that we get to talk about topics that people don't like to touch. No pun intended. Because it makes people feel all weird and icky and get those weird chills. Like, I don't want to talk about that. That's silly. Well, there's some stuff about this. There's certain parts of these topics that aren't really funny, because there are people hurting and dying because of this stuff. Maybe not dying. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody died over their porn addiction. I don't know. Who knows? Don't touch a porn addict's collection. May get stabbed. I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad we got to talk about this. I don't feel weird at all. I mean, it's kind of funny just to share this stuff, because I forget that, like, it goes out, and people who are related to me, who just know parts of my story, and then this shit comes out, and it's like, oh no, I know too much about him now. But fuck it. Sorry, guys. That's the last apology you get, because I had fun with this one. I like this stuff. I really enjoy talking about these odd topics that come out of nowhere. I never, like, when I was talking to him off mic and he brought this up, I didn't even know where this episode was going, because I do so many of these, and I just got back from the gym, and I am going back to the gym, and I don't love it, but it gets me out of the house. And, we'll see. Anyway, but I didn't know where this episode was going to go, and I didn't know what the topic was going to be. I knew mental health was involved, but I didn't know it was going to be about sex and porn. But I'm all for it, So you gotta get to know a little more about me. You either like me more, you hate me more, you're disgusted by me. Either way, you have a feeling towards me, and that's all I want. because I'm an attention whore. And not really, but I'll see you guys on the next one. Keep your heads up. And, hope everyone, again, is doing okay. Keep fighting. I know everybody has tough times, and even if you're having a good time today, doesn't mean you're going to have a good time tomorrow. So just toughen up and prepare for war, everyone. Hang in there. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.